Hi, welcome everybody to the webinar, and we're very pleased to welcome you here today in the second of the series of webinars that we're delivering in association with APM. We are Novare Consulting, and we are a training organisation, and very importantly I think for these presentations, we're also a consultancy organisation specialising in project and programme management. What that means is that our training courses are designed to be relevant and practical, but they can also provide certification if required. We also work with clients to develop their methods and their capability, which might include developing competence frameworks or career structures for project and programme management. Your presenters today are Chris and Sian Ferguson, that's me and Chris there. We set up Novare Consulting back in 2002, but rather scarily, we've each got 30 years experience in project and programme management, so yes, we probably are as old as we look in these photographs. Chris's focus has been with developing some of the leading global methods such as Prince2 and managing successful programmes, and he also has a claim to fame of helping to launch Agile DSDM some, I think, 20 years ago. And my role in the organisation has been on developing competence frameworks and career structures, and rather importantly, latterly we've been focusing on coaching and mentoring and helping our clients make the jump from being project managers to program managers. We have a wide range of certifications to support our training, and what you can see is that we're certified by all the leading project management professional bodies here in the UK. So what that really means is when we give advice to our clients, whether individuals or organisations, we're very much focused on what they need. We don't try to steer them down any particular route. We just want them to have the best professional support that they can get with using all of this guidance that's available to us. So the theme of the webinars has been very much about your project management career journeys. This is to support the APM's emphasis on their qualifications, actually delivering a coherent pathway through a project management career. So project management has been around since the pyramids, but it is a relatively new profession, and this emphasis on working with you to develop your career is to help you to think carefully about your development along that career pathway and to choose the qualifications that can support you best as you progress. So today we're focusing on the APM PMQ, which we've described as the key milestone in this series of qualifications. It is very much the bedrock of all project management qualifications. The start of the journey was the Project Fundamentals qualification, and next we're moving to the PPQ and finally the RPP. So as we've already said, there are three leading professional bodies in the UK, all providing qualifications for both individuals and organisations. And when you're choosing the next stage, the next qualification to support your career development, it's important to think carefully about what the strengths and weaknesses of each of those professional bodies. So the first one that we're going to think about is AXELOS, previously known as the UK Cabinet Office, and they're the owners of the Best Management Practice qualifications. And the qualifications really are based on mainly on methods. There's less emphasis on tools and techniques. They are globally the most popular qualifications, but they are very much methods-based. Then we have PMI. They're a not-for-profit organisation, and they're headquartered in the US. Their qualifications are also based, like APM's, on a body of knowledge. However, they have a strong life cycle within that body of knowledge, which is quite complicated to understand. But they do have a large amount of the tools and techniques that you'll need to manage your projects and programs. And then we have APM, who this year will be delivering a massive game changer for project management as they move towards delivering the chartered status. This really will take our new profession up into the giddy heights of things like accountancy and civil engineering, etc., and is a big development for us all here in the UK. APM are members of the International Project Management Association, and they are indeed the largest member of that association. But what that means is that their qualifications can be benchmarked internationally, and that's certainly important to a number of our clients who use the IPMA standard. The qualifications are all underpinned by the body of knowledge, and have a strong emphasis on a career pathway. So at this stage of your project management development, you're thinking about competing qualifications. We have Prince2 from Axelos, PMP from PMI, and APM PMQ from APM. So we've already thought that Axelos has an emphasis on process and method rather than tools and techniques. And Prince2 does provide you with a great route map through a project from start to project close. There is far less emphasis on the skills that you need to actually deliver that route map. PMI, the PMP, again, has an emphasis on processes as well as tools and techniques, which means that for organisations who already have a strong methodology that they use in their organisations, Prince2 and PMI are offering an alternative or a competing approach to the route map through a project. APM's qualification here, the APM PMQ, is all about the tools and techniques that you need to deliver projects successfully. So if we choose the APM PMQ, we're choosing a qualification that is supporting our career development. And we're also choosing a qualification that will help us deliver projects successfully, irrespective of what method is being used in any organisation that we might go to. And it's very much the bedrock, I believe, for project management skills. So carrying on with the theme of the journey, we need a method when we're delivering projects, and that's what things like Prince2 and Agile will give us, or indeed lifecycle management for those of you working in a product-based environment. But very importantly, along with that roadmap, we need to have the tools, the skills to be able to drive along that journey. And that's what the APM PMQ is bringing. It's very much focused on the practical things that you need to be able to deliver those projects successfully. It includes things like negotiation, conflict management. There's always a bit of conflict, unfortunately, in projects, together with risk and issue management and change control and configuration management. But if we're thinking about your career development, having the knowledge that the APM PMQ brings is fantastic, but it's really incumbent upon you to make sure that you're thinking about the experience that you need to take your career journey further. So be proactive about asking for moves to projects that you feel will develop your career, if that's at all possible. And then we're not allowed to drive on the roads here in the UK without having passed the driving test. And the key driving test in the UK, we believe, is the APM PMQ. And then combining that with APM membership to ensure that you're developing yourself in that career journey. So who is the qualification for? Well, it does make you stand out in the crowd. There's been some research done that shows people can expect higher salaries if they have a PMQ, so that's a good incentive for getting the qualification. Unlike the fundamentals qualification that we talked about last time, you do need some pre-existing knowledge of project management. It's not for those who've never been involved in a project environment before. And then very importantly, it's there for those who need an international IPMA level D qualification. If those of you familiar with working in Europe, the level D of the IPMA is a standard that is adhered to right across Europe, and certainly we work with clients in Germany, the Netherlands, Denmark, etc., and they all expect and want a level D qualification for their project managers. So I'm going to hand you over to Chris now, and he's going to talk to us about the 12 learning outcomes that are within the APM PMQ.
Thank you, Sharon. I'll add my welcome to everyone on the other end of the call here, and hopefully we can explain a bit more to you about the depth of the qualification, and that's called the PMQ, the Project Management Qualification. You'll see from this list, without me reading it through to you, that it is quite a comprehensive coverage of that combination that Sharon has mentioned of the techniques and the tools that you need to do the job of running a project, coupled with the leadership and people-related aspects. And for me, that's what stands out from the other qualifications, is that comprehensive list of project management competencies that you'd expect someone running a project to be able to have and to possess. And what I particularly like about this qualification is it is all structured around the life of a project. You learn the skills you need to navigate through a project, organising it and planning it and controlling it. But at the end of the day, you also have to make sure that you lead the team well, motivate people, you handle conflicts and negotiation well. So it's a real rounded tool set for the practicing project manager. It's another reason why organisations buy it wholesale and insist all their project managers go through it. So whether you're an individual considering doing a qualification, you can see from the list of topics, this is a comprehensive one. And from an organisational standpoint, there clearly are some benefits which we'll touch on a bit later on in this session. I'm going to go through these in turn just to cover off the sorts of things that are studied on the course. And the first of the learning outcomes, and there are 12 learning outcomes on the list as you saw just now, is really how we organise our projects. There's a generic project structure shown on the screen here, but I think what's clear and what was taught on the course is really who does what, who has what responsibilities. I often find in real life that can get horribly confusing. And who manages whom and who reports to whom, and it's particularly difficult if you're in the kind of organisation where as a project manager you don't own any of your own resources. You either have to buy them from suppliers or you'll get your team from functional departments who have the power and control over those resources, and that creates some real challenges. And the way in which we teach the course is we can practically explore those challenges because all of our trainers are practicing project managers with years of delivering projects experience under their belt. So we can talk about the reality of that. The other difficult role here is the one of sponsor. And a lot of organisations struggle to find who would be an appropriate sponsor, and then having found someone, will they actually undertake the role that the APM would define as what good looks like within the body of knowledge. So anyone else that maybe has a project office, the syllabus also covers off what a project office would do. They're not shown on the picture, but that's part and parcel of this topic. The next one is around the project life cycle. And as Sean has mentioned already, many of you will have, or possibly will have, your own life cycle methodology or structured approach to running projects in your organisations. What this does is give a sort of a view again of a good practice life cycle, and it mentions a whole series of different reviews. The suggestion here is you've got a project life cycle, which is when you bring the change about. Then there's a period during which benefits are realised and are actively measured by the organisation as resulting from the projects, the extended project life cycle. And then you've got the period of time in which whatever you put in place, whether it be a system, a set of processes, some new technology or whatever it may be, that is in operation for what is called the product life cycle until it's taken out of service and replaced with something else. Some businesses, the operational life cycle can be tens of years if you happen to be building a train or a wind farm or something of that nature. But you can see that there are gate reviews, go, no-go decision points, and there are post-project reviews, so we actually actively learn lessons in a project. And I think what I often find is people do the capturing of lessons but fail to learn, so they always end up making the same mistakes over and over again. So learning about good practice on this course in this regard gives you a lot of practical takeaways to go back into your organisations and start influencing some of the practices within those organisations. The project management environment is the next set of topics, and here we have the distinction between projects and programmes and portfolios. And I often ask people what is the key difference between them, and indeed this is a key part of the syllabus in this area, because a lot of clients have got confusion around what you call a project, what is a programme, what is a portfolio. Some people overdo the project word and call everything a project, which feels a bit like you're on the Apprentice show. Other people misunderstand the word programme. It just is a big project and doesn't actually get to be a programme. So we explore the different features of programmes and projects and portfolios, and also set them within the context of the strategy of the organisation. And some of you will be working on projects that the organisation has invested in order to derive a business case because it wishes to bring about an improvement. So that's one type of project. There's another type of project where you're selling a project to a customer and it's then governed under some form of contract. Maybe you're part of a supply chain. So there's a commercial context to the project management environment. We cover off tools here as well in this topic area around things like PESTLE and SWOT. Again, techniques that I'm sure many of you will have heard of. Some of you may have even undertaken on projects. The idea of refreshing this during a particularly lengthy project life cycle is something that we cover off here. So we get the language of project management understood and the definitions and the structure. The fourth one is quite a short set of learning outcomes, and it's really around governance and methods. And governance and methods is really about how the organisation takes decisions with regards to projects and who is allowed then to make such decisions. For example, who can approve a major change to a project? It may have to go beyond the boundary of the project to get extra funding. who chooses which project managers to assign to projects. So all these are covered off in the governance of project management. And we also talked a bit about methodologies. We mentioned earlier things like Prince2, which I depressingly realized was launched 21 years ago, which just makes me feel very old having been involved in its creation. But that is an example of a methodology that ought to be considered. So the APM in its generic approach to projects does make reference to the fact that you may have either a Prince2 type of methodology in use, or you may have other methodologies such as lifecycle management or such as Agile, for example. So being able to cross-refer that in this particular topic is something that we cover off. The fifth one, and the first deeply sort of a one, is really around the communications. And here we cover off the general business of communicating between project manager and team, the business of project managers managing upwards, the business of communicating with your stakeholders, engaging with stakeholders, and then particular skill sets and conversations around negotiation. Many of you will have to do negotiation on your projects, either to get resources, you'll negotiate with suppliers, you'll negotiate with customers, internal stakeholders you'll have to negotiate with, and structured approaches to negotiation to make a huge difference, positive difference to projects. If it does go badly, then of course you enter the world of conflict management. This is another key topic in this communication section of the course. Because conflict management, it's going to occur on every single project. It has on every single project that I've ever run. I actually did manage to run a project once where two of my team members were divorcing each other, but that's another story for another day. But some conflict you ought to try and resolve, and can resolve, but only if you use a kind of structured approach to it based on the outcomes you want to achieve. So for me, some really useful content in this bit in terms of some people skills. Now, naturally enough, as project managers, you'll also be project leaders, and there's a view that is a project manager a leader, or is it a leadership that takes the greater bulk of your time? But here, by exploring leadership and different approaches to leadership, you can strike the right balance given the kind of project you're working on. Projects all need leading, no doubt about it, and you'll all have different leadership styles in terms of the project. And that's explored in this particular section of the course, and the impact that your leadership style has on the project itself. We also talk about the creation and management of teams here, and different structured approaches, how you build a team. Often you'll get a load of different people joining from different parts of the organisation. They got sent to you perhaps, but you've got to take that group and then develop it into a team. So we explore the team working, we explore how you build a team, and what a good team looks like, to give some practical hints and tips. The next topic is around planning. Some people like to plan and some people don't like to plan. John Harvey Jones came up with a good quote, which I quite like. He said, planning is an unnatural process. It's much more fun to do something. And the nice thing about just doing something is that failure will come to you as a complete surprise rather than being preceded by a period of worry and depression, which is how a lot of people see planning. But it's such an important part of running any project, and indeed it's the most comprehensive set of learning outcomes in the whole APM PMQ qualification. This one starts off with the business case and benefits. All projects need a business case to justify their existence, and all projects should be aimed at bringing around benefits, ideally of a measurable sort, tangible, measurable benefits. Some projects are done because of compliance reasons. They're a must-do project, so we explore all these different aspects of how you would structure a business case and put one together for those kinds of projects. We also explore some of the financial calculations, so you'll need to bring your maths head with you if you come on this particular qualification, and try and work out things like discounted cash flow investment appraisals and things of that nature. Clearly we need to make sure we build plans. Project management plan is the comprehensive control document for the life of any project, and we explore what goes into a project management plan. Plan is more than just a schedule in this context. But having said that, we need to make sure that we include schedules as part of the plan, that's a separate learning outcome. But then, having set the project management plan up, you need to consider the estimating approach that you might use. I've seen a wide variety of estimating techniques, from people licking their fingers and sticking it in the middle of the air just to come up with a random number, to people who use top-down, bottom-up, comparative and parametric estimating techniques. So we explore what all those actually mean on the course, so you can start to pick and apply the best ones to suit your project and the context in which you're delivering it. We've also got stakeholder management involved in this one, planning for success. because all projects, when creating the project management plan and the business case, involve consultation with the stakeholders about the benefits they'd like to see the project deliver, the concerns they have with regards to the project. You can build things into the project management plan to deal with those as part of planning this particular project. Naturally, when you've created your project management plan, you'll have to control progress against the plan and information management, the reporting and the management and control of information, how you deal with data. Some projects are more sensitive than others. Some of you may be working now within a military context, for example, or running a project involving changing an organization, and there are sensitivities around how you handle and manage that information. Everyone's favorite exam question, or some people's anyway, is around earned value. And this revolves mathematical techniques for understanding the value that's earned versus the planned costs versus the actual costs, and creating a set of equations that tell you, as a snapshot, how well the project is performing in its consumption of resources and its delivery of value earned. Some people, it's a Marmite topic, I think, this one. You either love it or you hate it. But it does come up a fair bit in terms of the examinations itself. So it's well worth exploring, which of course we do on the course. So there's a lot in planning for success in terms of the learning outcomes. The next outcome, I quite like this slide. Sean put it together, not me. I can't claim to have done this, but it's all around scope management. And some of you may be suffering from scope creep today as we sit here on the webinar. This just means uncontrolled change. Now, naturally enough, you need to make sure that we've understood the requirements that your users have or your customers have in the first instance. And that's quite a hard job to pin down, a prioritized set of requirements that your users or your customers demand from the project. The trick then is to work out the scope of the solution that will deliver and meet those requirements. So we can make sure the requirements, if they're not understood, will result in a slightly flaky scope. We use a series of breakdown structures to explore the scope, so it's not just about the work breakdown structure. We also explore the other breakdown structures, such as using product breakdown structures, for example, and organization breakdown structures, and then cost breakdown structures to try and pull together the budget for the project. Once you've got the scope baselined, version 1.0 of the scope, you'll need to place it under formal change control. And formal change control processes, I'm sure you've all got them in your organizations, but I'm just not sure how effective they are. So what we teach on the course is really a structured approach to capturing changes, examining and exploring the impact those changes are going to have, and particularly on, are they extra things to be added to the scope, which most changes tend to result in, and then starting to understand what the implications are with regards to the schedule and the costs and so forth. And for some of you, that will involve contractual conversations, either with your suppliers or with your customers. And placing the scope under formal control means when a change is approved, you must handle and manage the versions of that scope. So if you release version 2 and upgrade that from version 1, you make sure everyone who has a copy of that version 1 deletes it and has a copy of version 2. Systems help with this regard, but really the configuration management of that in its simplest form is version control. And again, some projects will have much more complicated configuration requirements. If you happen to be building a highly technical set of hardware or infrastructure or software or something of that nature, you'll need to make sure that the configuration of that end product is very well defined as part of building the scope of the project. So we cover all of those aspects in scope management. The next area is one around scheduling and resource management. What's critical for me on any project that I've worked on is that you can't build a schedule without having the resources to deliver the work. And if anyone out there is building a schedule at the moment with no resources being promised to you, then your schedule really results in a wish rather than a serious intent. So this set of topics under scheduling and resource management talks about scheduling the project, network analysis, critical path analysis, the use of Gantt charts to depict the durations of the activities, all subjects I'm sure you're familiar with. And a lot of you will be using software packages for this, and that's absolutely fine. We need to understand a bit about what they can do. But I've always found that with software packages, if you put garbage in one end, you get garbage out the other end. It just looks very nice, but it's still garbage. So understanding what goes into the schedule, and then starting to explore more about the resources that you need to do the various activities of the project. Resources could be people, they could be access to facilities and buildings and those sorts of things. So we explore different resource types that are going to be used on the project. And then explore different techniques, such as maybe smoothing those resources out or leveling the resources if you've got constraint on the use of resources. So explore and explain those different techniques. We also talk on this one about how you can then say, I've got a fully resourced schedule, how do I cost that? And how do I build a budget for the schedule? So once the budget evolves, then that clearly starts to say, okay, this is how much the project will cost. Then you need to reflect back on the business case. Can we still afford it? Is it still worth doing? Is it still a viable and worthwhile project? So we start not just to teach this one at a time, but they start to build the relationships between these different topics as the course unfolds over time. Once, of course, you set up your finances, you undertake budget and cost controls. So you track expenditure during the project, external expenditure, as well as the internal consumption of resources during the life of the project, which then connects back to things and techniques like value management, for example. So that's schedule and resource management. The next topic is around project procurement, and again a structured approach to how you might buy the things you need for projects. It's important for all project managers to understand this, because at some point projects will have to go and procure something. It may be an external contractor, something as simple as that, or it could well be something a bit more substantial, like a new IT system, an office block, or whatever it may be. So we've got to make sure that we understand the procurement process, even if in real life the supply chain people or the procurement people within your organisations will be the ones actually undertaking this. It's not true to say as well that you can speed up the delivery of components just by putting more people on the job. Lead times are what lead times are, but that has a big impact on schedules. So understanding how to select suppliers, what criteria you might like to think about and consider, understanding the implications of that in terms of the project and the business case, all part of the procurement topic. Number 11 is around risk and issue management. And a very common problem I find is what's the difference between a risk and an issue? And a very simple answer to that question is a risk is an event that may happen, and an issue is an event that has happened. So it's all around timing. And I think you can see on the slide this person's currently suffering from issues rather than risks. Shouldn't have gone in the water if there was a sign on the beach warning about the danger of there being sharks. What's covered on this course, of course, is risk management and issue management, two separate topics. And essentially risk management is about understanding the environment in which you're delivering the project. And here you might go back to a SWOT analysis. There are opportunities and threats. And the opportunities and threats are the things that feed into risks. And what they do is start then to list some assumptions about the project, some of which may turn into negative threats, which are risks, some of which may turn into positive opportunities. And I suspect that if you build a risk register in your projects at the moment, you've probably got way more risks than you have opportunities. It seems to be a common theme that all project managers are generally pessimistic people. So risk management, you build a risk register, you analyse the risks having identified them, you decide what to do about them, and then you make sure that the decisions you make around mitigation measures are cost effective in themselves. Then you set up a means to track the risk register on a frequent basis throughout the life of any particular project. So we cover all of that in this topic. Why bother doing risk management? Because a lot of people say, let's just get on with the job rather than worry about it. Well, it just prevents issues from occurring. An interesting metric to understand is how many of your risks actually turned into issues. Because if they did turn into issues, then clearly your mitigation measures either weren't very good or you just happened to be doing a very risky project. The second topic is around issue management, and this is about understanding when events do occur. Sometimes they're risks that have happened, sometimes they're just events that occurred that you simply weren't expecting, and that's back to the uncertainty to do with any of the projects. When issues do happen, you need to be acting on them immediately, communicating with the stakeholders who have raised the issue in the first place. And what then happens is that some issues you'll need to resolve with the stakeholders who raised them. You can have some issues around resources or resource shortfalls. Some issues also result in changes. So that links back to the change control topics that we covered earlier on and the configuration management thereafter. But the idea of capturing an issue, examining the impact that the issue has, not just on will it make us late and will it cost us more money, but some issues will impact on things and factors such as stakeholder perception of the project. And some issues can generate further risk. Some issues can destroy your business benefits and therefore erode your business case. So we look at the multiple impacts that these events have, whether risks or issues impact, and cover all those in this particular section. The The other important aspect is around the escalation. At what point do you have to go to the sponsor, because the project manager cannot make the decision in this regard. The final one is around quality management. And there are lots of definitions of quality. I'm sure your organisations have your own definitions and views of what good looks like. In simple terms, it's about fitness for purpose. It's ensuring that the products we deliver, the deliverables of the project, if you will, are all fit for purpose. They pass their acceptance criteria. And at the start of the project, as part of the PMP, we have a quality plan for making sure we understand exactly how we're going to do the quality work of the project. Quality controls are then applied during the project, and we need to make sure the right controls are applied, the right tests are done by the right people at the right time, and everything passes first time. That would be a naive view. So it's back to the schedule, and in the schedule it says test it, then go live. You should maybe have a test it, then fix it, then test it again, and then go live. So thinking about aspects of quality control in this regard. The third aspect is around one of assurance. And the fundamental principle of quality assurance in the body of knowledge of the APM is that assurance is independent of that which is being undertaken, and therefore that which is being assured. It's a bit like not marking your own homework. Some of you will be in an environment where external assurance and auditors come to check the project out, or maybe your customer sends people in to assure themselves and give themselves some confidence that your project is on course to meet its objectives and its targets. The fourth area of quality management is around continual improvement. And that links back to the lessons learned we talked about in the life cycle a little bit earlier on. The idea that all projects feed back continual improvement ideas means that we'll get smarter at how we execute projects, do the work of projects, and so forth. So I hope that's a reasonable whistle-stop tour through the 12 learning outcomes. Let's talk a bit now about the exam itself. This one is different to the other two exams that Sean talked about a little earlier on, in that both Prince 2 and the PMP from PMI are both multiple choice exams. This one is not. As you can see from the first bullet, it's a 3-hour essay style exam. And I like the idea that you actually spend 3 hours writing down answers to questions, simply because that ability to communicate is a key skill of any project manager. Now, some of you would think, I haven't written an essay since I was back in university or college or wherever, and that's fine, but that is what it is. A lot of people struggle with writing for 3 hours, and some people even go into physical training so they can write a lot in 3 hours. I guess my advice would be to write legibly so that the examiner can read your paper properly. The first job you actually have to do is to look at the 16 questions that you have been provided with and pick 10 of them. So that's the first job that you need to do. And then it's about 50 marks per question with a pass mark of 55%. So as you can see, 50 marks times 10 questions is the 500 marks, and you need across the whole paper excuse me, to get 55% in order to achieve a pass. It's paper-based. The exam papers are sent away after the exam marked by the APM and sent back to you within 4 weeks. I'm really pleased that we have a really high pass rate, an exam success rate around 85% plus, which is an excellent set of results given the quantity of these courses that we run in each given year. For those of you who have a Prince 2 practitioner qualification, there is a prior learning, which means that if you have that qualification, there is an option to do a shorter version of the 3-hour paper, because if you did a Venn diagram of Prince 2's topics and overlaid them with APM's topics, you'll find the overlap in the middle are the topics that you don't need to study for this shortened version of the exam. So that results in 6 out of 10 questions, similar pass mark, 55%, naturally enough, and 50 marks per question. And again, we've got this high success rate in this shortened version of the exam. In practice, what you tend to find is even people who've got Prince 2 opt to do the 3-hour exam because of the APM language of the 3-hour exam and its comprehension within the organisation. But regardless of which one of the two options is right for you, you still end up with the APM PMQ. It's the same qualification at the end. Looking at the longer version, the full version of 180 minutes in 3 hours, it's important, I think, to structure your time if you're considering this exam. Spend 15 minutes reading the paper and choosing your questions. Don't hurtle into the first one and start just because you're suffering from maybe exam nerves or something like that. it's an old idea from a project management perspective, have an exam plan. So take 180 minutes and break it down into chunks, 15 minutes reading, and then 10 questions in 150 minutes, which gives you about a quarter of an hour per question. And at the end, that leaves the final 15 minutes to do some revision, some review, or some panic. But the more questions you attempt, the higher your chance of success. And it's for the point made on the sticky note there, which is that most marks are gained in the first part of a question. Or people sometimes look at the question and say, I know what the answer is, I'll write a summary of the answer first, and then I'll put the detail in that the examiner is looking for. And what we cover on our course is really understanding the way in which the questions are phrased, the language which is used to phrasing the questions, the structure of the answer expected by the examiners, and we need to make sure that you're as well prepared as we can possibly get you, so you have the best chance of passing the exam, and we work hard to do that. So that's a bit about exam timing. In terms of exam providers, clearly it's an APM PMQ exam. We're delighted to be an accredited provider, one of a number that you'll find on the APM's website. Clearly we would hope that you would care to choose ourselves in this process. But think about your own preferred options. The classroom training, I think, is good to get the conversations and discussions going around topics. You get to meet different people and network, and there's a lot of benefits for classroom training. Some people have a preference for e-learning, and actually we as an organisation offer a blended solution of both e-learning and classroom-based training. Others elect just to do self-study and not attend a course at all. With a 3-hour essay paper with 16 questions from which you choose 10, that's a risky approach, but nonetheless it's a legitimate approach. That just suits some people's learning preferences. So have a think about your preferred options, whether as an individual you're considering the course, or whether as an organisation you're considering putting a range of people through the courses. Exams are normally taken during the course if you're attending one, but are also available in designated exam centres, which is where people doing self-study would sit their exam. As it says at the bottom, the classroom training is the most popular. So with that in mind, I'd like to hand you over to Sian again now to talk more about some of the benefits of the project management qualification from the APM.
Thanks, Chris. So the benefits for organisations are on this whiteboard here, but when we work with our clients, one of the benefits of the APM PMQ is that we are able to offer a blended modular approach where we look at how the clients actually deliver projects within their organisations and mix that with the learning outcomes from the APM PMQ. So for a number of our clients, we offer either 3 modules of 3 days or 2 modules of 3 days approaches where we can then focus on this is what APM says good looks like, but this is how we do it here. And that's been an incredibly successful and popular approach for our larger clients who have achieved far higher actually than that 85% pass rate. The other benefits for organisations are that you are providing your project managers with an internationally recognised benchmarked qualification, and that's increasingly important for those organisations who are bidding to win projects to deliver for clients and customers. APM are the largest project management professional body in Europe, and that means that there is respect for APM wherever you are in Europe, and people understand that the PMQ is a level D qualification for the IPMA, and that means that it is very well understood if you are a global organisation. The benefits for individuals are, up there in the right-hand corner is that it's financial, and some research has shown that you can earn up to £10,000 a year more if you have the APM PMQ. It is actually the key qualification for your project management career. If you have the PMQ under your belt, then you really do possess the knowledge that you need to deliver your project successfully, and it should be the cornerstone, I believe, of every project manager's career. And as Chris alluded to, Prince 2 and the APM PMQ are actually compatible, and we have designed training programs for some of our clients whereby the delegates do a Prince 2 course because that's their methodology that they use within the organisation is Prince 2, and then they follow that up with the APM PMQ shorter route to gain both certifications. So what we have is something with a method and then something with the tools and techniques to deliver the projects. So whether you're doing that in a bespoke way, such as our three modules of 3-day programs that we deliver, or whether you're doing that using, say, Prince2 or Agile together with APM PMQ, you really will have the best of both worlds in an approach like that. And then as an individual, the other benefit for you is that it will help you to become an APM associate member possibly, or indeed maybe an APM member. So do be aware of the APM membership opportunities that are there for you once you do start on your qualification journey. So there's been some feedback that APM, from research APM have undertaken over the last few years, and you can see there's very, very, very high satisfaction ratings here, with 94% of people feeling that the qualification improved their self-confidence in managing their projects. And that's really not surprising. You'll see from the list that Chris went through that this really is a very comprehensive syllabus, and it does give you everything that you need to be able to deliver your project successfully. And don't worry if you haven't used some of those techniques, just keep your course notes in your delegate workbooks, and you can flick back to those topic areas that you haven't used more recently to support you as you move into different challenges on new projects. So 97% of people say they'll recommend this qualification to their fellow project managers, and I think that's a fantastic stat. And 86% enjoyed greater project success as a result of taking the qualification. And I think those statistics really demonstrate the provenance of the APM PMQ and the fact that it is the cornerstone of any project manager's journey. So back to the theme of the career journey, and for those of you who haven't already got your PMQ, just think about your next milestone. You hold the keys to your project management career. It is in your hands, and we would strongly encourage you to think of project management as a profession with a coherent career structure to support you along your working project. That didn't really exist when Chris and I started out on our project management career some 3 million years ago. So you've got all the opportunities now to be able to support your career with professional development, and to think of your professional development both in terms of your knowledge, the qualifications, and your experience, and be proactive in your career development. So when you're considering this qualification, think about your the approach that works for you, as Chris said, whether that be e-learning, classroom, blended approach, and make a plan and indeed follow that plan to achieve success in your project management qualification. So we're hoping that you've enjoyed the webinar, and that you'll join us for the next one in the series, where we're talking about the APM Professional Project Qualification. That was quite difficult to say, so apologies for that. We were very lucky to pilot this qualification with APM, and we're hoping that some of you will be able to join us for this next webinar. And now I'm going to hand you back to Nat, and we move into the question and answers as part of the webinar.
Right, we've got quite a few questions. First question, would you advise Prince2 practitioners read the full course material or the APM BOK before undertaking this training and qualification?
So the qualification is based around the APM body of knowledge, not on the Prince2 manual. So apologies for any confusion this we've caused by mentioning Prince2. The qualification is based on the APM body of knowledge. So I would strongly advise you reading the APM body of knowledge. But as APM fully admit, the APM body of knowledge is designed as a pointer to the topics. It gives you an introduction to each of the topics, but you will need to go on and do further reading if you're going to be successful in your PMQ. And most training organisations support their delegates with a delegate workbook that they've created, and that's certainly what we do. We support our delegates with pre-course e-learning and a delegate workbook. And what those e-learning and the delegate workbook provide is everything that you need to pass your PMQ exam. So it takes everything from the body of knowledge and provides the additional reading and additional support just within the collateral that we provide you with when you do your APM PMQ. So forget about Prince2. When you do the PMQ, you need to focus on the body of knowledge and the things that your training providers give to you to support your exam success.
Thank you, Sian. The next question is, are employers likely to recognise Axelos or PMI qualifications in a greater value than this qualification?
View on that, rather than a definitive answer, it depends on those employers, and it also depends on the market sectors in which people are operating. So you might argue, for example, in the public sector, Prince 2 and the Axelos product set have got greater resonance in that sector with those potential employers. In the engineering sector, construction sector, for example, those have a much more fondness for the APM PMQ qualification, and less so for Prince 2. So it does very much depend on the sector. So anyone who's looking at being employed as a project manager should try and understand a bit about the target sectors they intend to work in, and do some research as to what those sectors choose to use by way of their structured approaches.
I think that's a really good answer from Chris there. And the other thing to think about is the organisations that you're targeting, what market they're operating globally. So, for example, for one of our clients, it is absolutely essential that we deliver them APM qualifications, because they're headquartered in Europe, and they want to see IPMA aligned qualifications across all their leading countries. If an organisation is headquartered in the States, then they might insist on PMI, PMP. So think about the sector that you're working in, and think about the area of the globe that you're operating in. One thing's for sure, doing the APM PMQ will support you wherever you're delivering your projects and whatever client you're delivering your projects for. So I think that, and then I'm going to go on a little bit more, I think the very exciting thing, I think employers will be changing or looking very clearly at what chartership offers. And the other very, very exciting thing that APM has been involved with is the Trailblazer apprenticeship. So I think traditionally employers have maybe been looking at things like Prince 2 because it's just simply the most popular. But with the Trailblazer apprenticeship, which has also inbuilt the APM PMQ within it, and with chartership, I think that the shift will happen towards the APM set of qualifications.
Thank you, Sian. The next question, so obviously this has made a good impression on someone. So what is the next step after listening to this webinar to achieve this qualification?
Give us a ring.
Yep, book on a course. Joking aside, have a look at the training organisations that are certified by APM. We all have to adhere to certain standards, and then carefully look at the options that they're giving you for your training. There are some organisations out there that might look very good cost effectively, but think about what they're offering. And there are a group of the training organisations have bonded together to create an organisation called Aspect, and we're part of that organisation. And what Aspect promotes is having small classroom sizes. If you come on an Aspect training providers course, you won't be sitting in a room of a very, very large room full of lots of people. You will get a decent amount of the trainer's time if you're choosing a classroom-based course.
The next question, is the foundation or introductory qualification required before taking this qualification?
It's not actually mandated by APM that you have to have the foundation qualification. However, when we're working with corporates in designing them a project management academy approach where we support the project managers through their career, we do strongly recommend they start off with the APM PFQ. And that's mainly because the APM language, as Chris has already alluded to in his description of the topics, might be slightly different to the language that has been used within an organisation. And the PFQ, with its high success rate, is a great way to give yourself a boost and to start your introduction to APM and the APM body of knowledge. So it's not mandated, but I think on balance, I would say that we definitely recommend it to the large corporates that we work with to start people's journey at the PFQ level.
Thank you, Sian. And following on from that question, what would be the recommended time span between taking the initial qualification and then progressing to this qualification? And would you vary that depending on the level of experience an individual practitioner has?
The latter half of that question is the answer to that question. I think I would vary it depending on the experience the person has. And I think also builds on the last question, because what we find is we have people who may be in their, I don't know, the latter stages of their careers, who've run projects informally, if you like, have a load of experience, but are unfamiliar with the language of the APM and the structure of it. So quite often they'll set fundamentals to get the language under their belt, and then quite quickly move on within a 12-month period to set a project management qualification, because they have the experience to draw upon to do so. I think if you're new to the profession of project management, starting with the fundamentals is something we'd always recommend anyway. And the number of our project management academies we run for our corporate clients insist, for example, that all their graduates attend the project fundamentals qualification as part of their graduate program. Then I would anticipate maybe a year or two in terms of the project delivery experience and exposure, so that people actually understand the world of projects a little bit before doing the exam. Otherwise, some of the topics, so I'll pick one such as earned value management, can be quite confusing to understand if you've never actually worked on a project. So gain some project experience. 2 years to 3 years would be a normal time to take between the two exams.
Next question, quite closely linked to that. The exam itself, is it open or closed book exam?
Closed book.
Also, a question in terms of the detail of the qualification. Has this course and examination changed since the change in name from APMP, and does the qualification still sit at the same level?
The qualification hasn't changed at all in its essence, except for all of us have had to go through doing a global replace for the name from APMP to APM PMQ. But I think the key difference and the rationale for the name change is to emphasise the career route through the qualifications. And with the name change, that emphasis is very much on the career route through the qualifications, which wasn't there before. So the detail of the syllabus hasn't changed at all, and the exam is very much at the same level as it has always been.
Thank you. Two other questions that I'll give you sort of in order now, because you'll be able to answer them quite quickly. So one, what is the minimum entry requirement for the qualification? And two, how long is the classroom training option?
Okay, so there's, as I understand, there is no minimum entry requirement, but we all, APM and all the training providers, should recommend that you are working on projects to be able to come onto the course. Otherwise it will be very challenging, as Chris said, particularly when you go into some of the more technical areas such as EVM. And then the course can be delivered in a number of ways. Most of the open courses are delivered in 5 days, and that is very much just trotting through the syllabus with plenty of emphasis on exam practice, and the exam being on the final day of the course. We're very privileged to be working with clients who have got a different approach, and with those clients, as I said, we are able to deliver the course in a modular fashion. And from the delegate feedback, we have excellent delegate feedback for this, because what it does mean is that we're able to partner the APM PMQ with a case study and exercises that are relevant to that client, and people can have plenty of practice and do homework between the modules. So exam success rate is much higher, and satisfaction is, obviously delegate satisfaction is much higher. However, as in all things, you know, if you want to be driving that Rolls Royce, you have to have the budget to be able to do it. So both approaches are valid. The 5-day open courses or 5-day courses you have within your organisations, or a modular approach.
A couple more questions, all focusing on the detail of the qualification. So to start off, I think this would be useful for listeners. So just as an overview, what is the difference between this qualification, PQ and RPP?
So this qualification, and I'll let Chris talk about more of the detail of the syllabus in a second, because is that this qualification is a knowledge-based qualification, and it's for primarily, it's aimed at non-complex projects. The PQ is a competence-based qualification, and we'll be talking about that next time. So the PPQ syllabus is not asking you to learn everything that you've learned for your PMQ, it's exploring your competence in using that knowledge. And then the RPP is the phase shift up, and is designed for those working in complex projects, which can also be known as programs. If there's any more detailed syllabus stuff, then I'm definitely moving that on to Chris.
So yeah, I think the summary there is good. I think the PQ syllabus areas cover slightly fewer topics, and it gives people an opportunity as well to be able to exhibit competencies at both project and program at portfolio levels. But it's a case study driven competence-based qualification. The RPP, or Registered Project Professional, is a designation that you earn through the experience you have of working in a non-complex projects. So to undertake that, it requires competencies expressed in terms of what you have actually done on real projects and programs. So it takes it away from a classroom into the real world experience that people have got as individuals. There's two parts to it, and it's currently shifting, but essentially there's a preparation in terms of submitting competencies followed by an interview.
Thank you. That's a good answer, providing an overview of those qualifications. Another Prince-related qualification has come in. So the question as written is, does this qualification and Prince align, or do they sit at slightly different levels?
They do align. They're both aimed at practicing project managers. They complement one another very well indeed. It's interesting that this kind of Venn diagram where you overlap Prince 2's topics with the APM's topics only results in the APM dropping 1 hour off a 3-hour examination, because that tells you then that of the topics in the APM, that around about 2/3 of them are unique to APM. 1/3 overlap with Prince 2, which means 2/3 of Prince 2's don't overlap with the APMs. So for me, it is what makes it a complementary fit. And I think if you want to stand out in terms of CVs in the marketplace and so forth, gaining both of the qualifications gives you an edge whichever sector you happen to be operating in. And they do complement one another very well indeed.